Hello and welcome to special live transmission regarding Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan's visit to Russia. Much anticipated visit, a historic visit. This is the first visit after 23 years of any of Pakistan's premier to Russia on the special invitation of President Vladimir Putin. According to Foreign Office of Pakistan, a number of issues, especially Afghanistan and Islamophobia, are going to be discussed. And the key focus of Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan's tour to Russia would be the summit with President Vladimir Putin. And there are other issues which are likely to be discussed between the two sides when Prime Minister Imran Khan is being accompanied by a high-level delegation. So these areas include the bilateral trade, enhancing economic ties, and the energy cooperation as well. Now, given the circumstances globally, this visit comes at a very crucial time when there happens to be volatility and height of tensions on a different front between the US and its allies and Russia over Ukraine. There are a lot of things which need to be discussed and delved deeper into regarding this visit. And for discussion on this very historic visit, I am of course joined by an esteemed panel of guests. Some of them would be in the studio. I am joined by Dr. Amina Mehmood, who is joining me in the studio. She is foreign affairs expert, and Dr. Rana Ather Javed, who is also present in the studio. He is DG Pakistan House. And I'm also joined by Dr. Jamil Khan, who is a former ambassador. He is joining me in this special transmission on Skype. Thank you, all of you, very much for being at this special transmission regarding Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan's visit to Russia. We really appreciate your time. I'll jump into the discussion right away. I'll start off with you, Dr. Amina. Given the volatility at the international level and the international politics, how significant do you think this visit of Prime Minister Imran Khan's visit is to Russia? And what are those convergence points between Pakistan and Russia when it comes to the bilateral trade, bilateral relations between Pakistan and Russia?
Thank you, Jawad. It's a very pertinent question to think about that Pakistan was a Western ally. We have been most allied with the United States in the Cold War period, and after that even during the War on Terror. And people are taking it as a shift in Pakistan's foreign policy, while I am not taking it like because Prime Minister initially declared that we will come out of the camp politics. You know, I think as an expert on IR, as a professor of international relations, I think that it's better to keep your options and choices open. And nations who are doing this, they are performing better, they are gaining their national interest in a better way rather than to join one camp. So this visit is very significant in this regard, that Prime Minister is moving towards regional alliances. And since we are already in alliance with China, so and China and Russia has joined the same camp on the basis of their national interest in this region and beyond. So Pakistan's this move is very pertinent, especially in this scenario when we are abandoned, rather we are discarded by the West, and we have been pressurized, we have been labeled in different way, and they have forgotten what we have done for them during the period of this War on Terror. So I think that it's very significant in this regard. We have many things to share. If you remember that when we were asking for the technology transfer.
Dr. Amina, your point is well taken. We'll definitely delve deeper into various aspects. So what could be those areas in which there could be a bilateral cooperation between Pakistan and Russia? I would like to take this point, the significance of this visit, to Dr. Rana Ather Javed. Dr. Javed, what do you think? What are those convergence areas between Pakistan and Russia, and vis-a-vis when we talk about the situation after the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan and the dire humanitarian and the economic crisis the war-torn country is faced with? Because according to a research paper, the author is of the view that this happens to be the most significant point of convergence between Pakistan and Russia.
Well, thank you very much, Jawad. I think, to be honest, nation state normally do not build their relations on mutually exclusive basis. and Pakistan shouldn't have done it, and Pakistan is rectifying its foreign policy composition. And I would also say that the relation with West is pretty fine. They have been like this for forever. We had a relationship with US back in 50s, 60s and 70s, and then they changed also after 89 when the US left Afghanistan as open wound, and it was difficult for Pakistan to cater with all the, all whatever happened in the post-civil war. But let me go back to what you asked about. In my direct interaction with President Putin back in 22nd to 24th October in Sochi in Russia, I asked exactly the question which you asked me. And President Putin, it's on record, he said that Pakistan's role in stabilizing Afghanistan is no less than China and Russia, and that Russia seeks to improve relation with Pakistan. This is what he said directly. So it's a first-hand account of what President Putin's policy looked like toward Pakistan and also towards Afghanistan. The second point we must remember that this Russia, the current Russia under President Putin, is quite different than the Soviet Union. This is because Russia has built a sort of cluster of relationship in different parameters. It has built relation with even Western Europe and Middle East and Asia. Right now, Russia has prioritized actually its relations. Despite having a relation with India, we also questioned that, and the answer was that it is not mutually exclusive. India has its own relation with India is rather playing double hand also with Russia and with I would say US. But Pakistan on the other hand has taken it very seriously, and that's why its stance is pretty neutral in many international conflicts unless it comes from the United Nations. Number one. I think you wanted to ask another question.
Okay, Dr. Javed, I'll come back to you with certain other very significant points to be discussed. Now I'll move to Dr. Jamil Khan. Dr. Khan, thank you for your time at this special transmission. Now talking about the convergent areas between Pakistan and Russia when it comes to bilateral cooperation, we've seen over the years that this bilateral relationship has increased in diverse fields when it comes to energy cooperation, when it comes to defense cooperation, and then Pakistan's Prime Minister's statement speaks volumes that this particular visit is aimed at enhancing bilateral trade, economic ties as well. Now, when we talk about specifically the situation in Afghanistan, Pakistan's Prime Minister has been very vocal about highlighting the issue of dire humanitarian and economic crisis over there. Now, when we saw that Afghanistan was taken over by the Taliban, there was a very cautious position taken by Russia at that time. And now, when we talk about the dire humanitarian and economic crisis, Russia has always been wary of the fact of the fallout of terrorism from Afghanistan. Now, when we talk about this, how do you see Pakistan and Russia can cooperate vis-a-vis Afghanistan and dealing with its humanitarian crisis?
Well, Afghanistan humanitarian crisis, and it's not only the bilateral effort, it's multilateral effort as well. And Pakistan has always been advocating through all the platforms, including Prime Minister Imran, any platform of the world, wherever he was invited, including OIC, that how important and significant Afghanistan humanitarian crisis is. The world should collaborate. Now, the world has not collaborated as much was expected by us and by our Prime Minister, but at the same time, this bloc has a serious thinking about this Afghanistan destabilization. And your second part of the question, that Russia apprehension is that if Afghanistan gets destabilized, then obviously the very fact that they wanted to have a full grip on the drug control and the terrorism, that would be very difficult for them. The Russians have about 25 million Muslim power, a very strong community with them. And then Russians also cater for that they should be able to now win the hearts and minds. And that's why the Islamophobia factor, once the Imran Khan, he mentioned, and then such a strong statement came from Putin. So all these factors, if we have in our mind, then one thing is very clear, that the Putin time Putin has progressed very well in his diplomatic efforts in Middle East and Gulf countries. And now it is, I would say, if I may use Islamic diplomacy and the statements of this kind when the West is making various legislation against the rituals and against the hijab and other aspects of Muslims in those countries. This kind of a strong message that Putin gave, and that followed with the 17th January telephonic conversation with our Prime Minister, and followed by this very state visit of the Prime Minister. So all these factors, if we keep in our mind, Afghanistan has a bilateral interest. That Afghanistan stabilization without Pakistan, it would become very hard for the regional country to stabilize, to attribute in stabilizing Afghanistan.
So,
That's one.
beg your
Second,
pardon
Pakistan.
for the interruption, Dr. Jamil Khan. What could be the possibilities for Russian side in order to realize that if they contribute with humanitarian and economic assistance to avert the humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan, what could be the possibilities and options at the hand of Russian authorities?
The Russian, they are to Afghanistan, and Russians under the circumstances, the United Nations have still imposed sanction on Afghanistan, and even the humanitarian organizations of United Nations are not able to send their humanitarian assistance because of these sanctions, and not able to transfer their funds. I happened to speak to the director of the World Food Organization, and they are finding very difficult to have the funds available for the humanitarian arrangements there in Afghanistan. So under these circumstances, the Russians can always send them in the humanitarian material to Afghanistan and help them out, particularly once the sanctions imposed by the United States. So that is one aspect where Russians can expect. And then the multilateral level, regional multilateral level, I think all the SCO countries, less India, they are going to join their heads and hands together to make sure that Afghanistan is not destabilized, because it's not in the interest of Russia or any other neighboring country. So this is another significant point which is on the agenda, as the Foreign Office has already stipulated yesterday.
Dr. Jamil Khan, you alluded to a very important fact. One fact which was also mentioned by Foreign Office of Pakistan as well is that Islamophobia is going to be under discussion between the two leaders as well. Now, I'll come to you with the same point. Dr. Amina, when we talk about the Russian president's statement regarding the violation of religious freedom, and it was appreciated by Pakistan's Prime Minister, how do you think both countries can counter hate speech and Islamophobia given the circumstances when there is so much Islamophobia when we talk about India and especially in the Western countries as well?
Yes, this is the area where Russia and Pakistan are having convergence of interest. And since you mentioned the statement of President Putin, it is very encouraging that Pakistan can talk on this issue, because that is rising not only in Europe, but that is also rising in Asia. And India has been in alliance with Russia for a long. And if Russia is going to take a clear and positive stance on that, that would affect all the SCO countries as well, and that would be in favor of Pakistan. And since Ambassador mentioned that they are having a large Muslim population, and you see that during the period of President Putin, even war in Chechnya was fought, in Dagestan, and there was a lot of Muslim population was targeted. And since they have changed, it is visible that they have changed their policy towards their Muslim population. So Pakistan would be instrumental in talking on that, and that would be a more clear stance coming out of that, and that would help in the long-term relationship with Pakistan. Obviously, the relations between Pakistan and Russia are not based on religion, because religion is not a sustainable basis of the relationship in any case in international relations, because interest matters. So here we see that convergence of interest is present. But Jawad, I would mention that if we would continue our relationship, because we are having a large volume of trade with Russia, and if we will be having sustainable economic cooperation, that would be more helpful to establish relations on long-term basis and sustainable basis.
Okay, Dr. Rana, Javed, what do you think about how Russia and Pakistan can counter Islamophobia and hate speech? A very loud and clear message sent by the statement of President Vladimir Putin that it's publishing these sketches like that is not artistic, but it is a sheer violation of religious freedom.
I think, as we all agree, that the President Putin is a very strong leader, and he knows his politics very well. It's not only for 25 million Muslims living in Moscow or in Russia, but also if you know that he just converted all this Orthodox church into mosque and made for that. He has been vocal absolutely on freedom of expression should not be mixed with insulting the religion, religious values. Him as coming a strong leader, along with Pakistan's Prime Minister, and I would say a very handful Muslim leaders, which is unfortunate, but this is the way it is. At the moment, the politics is. President Putin demonstrated time and again that he is a strong leader. He understands global politics. He also understands that this public consumption, the popular view of the Muslim, overall population, exactly hinges on this one. Because if you look in France, look in Britain, like in other countries, there had been, especially in France, very strict laws have been imposed. Maybe not in Britain actually, but in France there have been very strict laws have been imposed. People wearing hijab. In India, it has gone absolutely beyond understanding of any human value. What Indians have done in different universities and colleges, not only they have prevented the young girls and to take the hijab, but also they have assaulted them.
Very, very pertinent point you've just raised, that we have seen continuously rising Islamophobia, and this incident of happening with Muslim student girls over there, the ban, especially in the state of Karnataka, we have seen, and snubbing them and harassing them over there, it actually needs the international condemnation. Moving to you, Dr. Jamil Khan, when we talk about the energy cooperation, we have seen the US has imposed new sanctions on Russia with regard to the tensions over Ukraine, and resultantly we have seen Germany has halted the approval process of the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline. And now Pakistan's Prime Minister in his statement said that this visit will be focusing on the realization of Pakistan Stream gas pipeline project. What could be the difficulties for Pakistan in the realization given the circumstances with the new sanctions by the US imposed on Russia?
I think it's going to be uphill task of now materializing our gas stream pipeline from Kochi to Kasur, 1,100 kilometer. If the sanctions are pouring in, UK has imposed a sanction on the pipe banks and some billionaires. Germany has avoided now for the project, the Nord Gas pipeline. The other European Union is going to announce it today. President Putin has said that post-sanction which world has never seen. So those kind of sanctions have imposed on Russians, then there is going to be some quite a difficult situation. But in case we some bartering, as the way Prime Minister has gone there, and if we do on a barter trade, we have so many things to offer, and we have already enhanced our trade from 2019 about 45.8%. Trade has been enhanced. It's now close to about 800 million. Which was about 50% of it just until 19. So it's having a very smooth trajectory. And with the Prime Minister's visit, I assume that it's going to really take a new heights. It's going to attain a new heights in terms of our trade also. And we can offer them in Pakistan textile, agriculture products from Pakistan and Russians. We've been always having technical expertise and transfer of technologies, including perhaps a steel mill also during this visit.
So, Dr. Jamil, you alluded to the fact that the trade volume between Pakistan and Russia has increased to an all-time high of 800 million US dollars. But some critics are of the view that there is far more potential when it comes to the bilateral trade between the two countries. So, what are those key areas in which Pakistan and Russia can cooperate? You just mentioned that it could be steel mills. So, what are the other areas?
No, steel mills and in fact our defense industry. Now that the Ukraine has that problem, we've been having a lot of collaboration with the Ukraine in terms of our T-80 tank and air-to-air refueler repair and so on. And we've been also importing wheat from Ukraine, about 1.5 million ton, and now that can very conveniently be, or perhaps we can have it from both the countries, but. Russians, once the Prime Minister is visiting, I assume that the joint communique would mention all these points. And we have variety of textile products, the leather products, the agriculture products, and Russian, obviously, if only the steel mill project, which we had taken some steps forward just a couple of years ago, and then again, it got a little slow. But if that happens, then Pakistan is in a dire need of steel. It has gone to 200,000 rupees per ton now, which is almost double than what it was last year. So from those point of view, I think this is going to be quite significant. And defense industry collaboration, where we have the tanks and the aircrafts and helicopters, Mi-38.
Dr. Jamil Khan, your point is well taken. There are a number of areas in which Pakistan and Russia can enhance their trade volume. Former Ambassador, thank you very much for being with us at PTV World during this special live transmission regarding Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan's visit to Russia. Dr. Rana, Ather, Javed, when we talk about the trade ties and the economic ties between Pakistan and Russia, as Dr. Jamil Khan alluded to the fact that it has increased to an all-time high of 800 million US dollars, and that is a fact that was also narrated by Pakistan's ambassador to Russia, Shafqat Ali Khan. To be precise, it is 730 million in 2020. Now, what are those key areas in which it could be enhanced? Dr. Jamil Khan alluded to the fact it could be in garments, textile industry, it could be in defense cooperation as well.
I think, to be honest, the main strength of Russia is energy. So the gas pipelines and the LNG, which we are buying now, we could also go to Russia, and it's in July 2021. I think they signed several MOUs regarding, I think, around over $2 billion projects which are supposed to be initiated, and the feasibilities are done in several of the projects. And it's my understanding that one sector is energy, other sector is I don't know if we're possible, but there are technologies I know in Russia for the agriculture, and that can be corroborated on one. On technology, on otherwise like on IT and their ventures, joint ventures with the Western startups, Western countries also pretty much attractive. Because since we only look towards the West, so we have less understanding that what Russians can offer in infrastructure building, for example, roads, bridges, and if one visit Moscow or other cities, you would notice in Petersburg that their architecture, their road building, the network and rail, they're really good in that. And I think our colleague referred to the steel mill. The steel mill issue is a bit different, I would say, because it requires here at home the intention and the will to refresh it or refurbish it, and thereby to ask Russian to step in again and to restart the process. Of course, the industrialization here mostly, as we understand, is related to mostly at the moment is going towards the IT and automation.
Going towards the IT and automation.
But the last point I want to make about the defense.
Please go ahead.
About the defense, as we know that India has taken S-400 missiles from Russia, but at the same time they've also acquired Rafale from France. So the avionics, the complexity, despite that they're using mostly Russian weapons, They are now moving towards the US and also Western technologies. I think Pakistan should also I don't know, but we can combine our.
We'll come to this point
Yeah.
of defense cooperation between Pakistan and Russia. Now I'm joined by Mr. Andrey Kortunov, who is Director, Russian International Affairs Council. He is joining me on Skype during this special transmission. Mr. Kortunov, thank you very much for being with us at PTV World. So a historic visit after 23 years of any of Pakistan's premier to Russia. How is this now? We've lost the connection with Mr. Kortunov. We'll try to reconnect to him. And now coming back to you, Dr. Rana, Ather, Javed. So please go ahead with the point, the defense cooperation that
Yeah,
you
I was saying that despite the complexity of the Su-35, the avionics, because we are having F-16 and our own JF-17 Thunder and others, we have just acquired Chinese aircraft as well. My understanding is that Pakistan, once we are moving ahead and we have this political international security resolution, it's resolved between US, NATO and Russia, we will be in a better position to also maybe look for beyond other Western technology. We could also always ask for this aircraft Su-35. Of course, it's as I said, it's a complex avionics, it's difficult, but still this is also one of the best aircrafts. And of course, this helicopters we acquired. And there are many other cooperation in small arms development. Pakistan is one of the leading countries in producing small arms. So we could also benefit from each other, the joint ventures, because Russians still hold the key in many ways as a member of the United Nations Security Council to engage Russia positively in order to subdue or undermine that negative influence of India. There is an appetite, of course. Russia also wants Pakistan to have its rightful place, strategic place in South Asia, and that could be one of the diplomatic cooperation which is already being discussed and which will be discussed as we proceed.
Your point is
with
well
the
taken.
relationship.
Dr. Amina, what do you think about the defense cooperation as Pakistan and Russia signed a bilateral defense cooperation agreement back in 2014, and then we saw Mi-35 assault helicopters were also delivered to Pakistan, and there had been joint military and naval exercises as well.
Yeah, I think that it is already going on, and as you mentioned, in 2014 the agreement was signed, and that was a defense back proper, and Mi helicopter is instrumental in transporting troops from one place to another, and that is very important. Another point, as Dr. Bhatti mentioned, that we are making production of JS-17 here, and by the way, that is based on Russian engines. And it means that not only in case of procurement from Russia, we can have a supply chain network to enhance our cooperation in terms of economy, in terms of industry, and in terms of technology transfer we are deprived of. And as far as defense cooperation is concerned, it is already on the way, because we are having SCO exercises as well. And on SCO, we are having meetings of defense ministers, and Russia is cooperating as well. Another area of cooperation in terms of defense is stability in Afghanistan, where humanitarian crisis is there, and at the same time stability is also demanded.
So,
and
Dr. Amina, when we talk about the defense cooperation, we have seen
Yes.
the sale of $5.5 billion the missile defense system S-400 from Russia to India. So how can Pakistan raise its concerns towards Russian authorities regarding this?
I think, Jawad, this is a matter of national interest. We have been following this policy that we always question other countries or major powers' relation with India. While I think that we should pursue
Dr. Amina,
our
I'll come
own
back to
relationship.
you with this. I'm joined by another guest, Mr. Andrey Kortunov, who is the Director, Russian International Affairs Council. He's joining me on Skype. Mr. Kortunov, thank you very much for being with us. A historic visit by Pakistan's Premier after 23 years gap to Russia. How is this visit being seen in Russia? Mr. Kortunov, can you hear me, please? Okay. Dr. Amina, we were talking about the Russian sale of S-400 to India and Pakistan's concern regarding this, given the fact which Dr. Ather Javed also mentioned that they have acquired Rafale jets from France as well.
Yes, that I am saying that we should not focus on that what they are doing with India. We should focus on what their relationship is going on with Pakistan, and instead of making questions, we should build up our own cooperation. What we can offer to them and what we can acquire from them, and this is a very balanced and very open international policy that we should make our choice open. We are having relationship with the West. They are our largest trading partner in all terms. And then we can open our relationship with Russia, and we can work for enhancement. If they are having close relationship with India, we cannot repeat the history again and again. I think that is irritating in relationship. So we are also having our own strength, as Dr. Bhatti mentioned, that we are having F-16 and number of other strong points in our defense, in air defense, in naval defense. We are buying frigates from all over, and especially from China. So let India do what they want.
Dr. Javed, when we talk about the autonomy of a certain region, when we talk particularly about Kashmir and their rights and free and impartial plebiscite according to the UN resolutions, a couple of days before we saw that Russia has recognized the two separatist states, Luhansk and Donetsk in the eastern Ukraine. So this policy happens to be because there are ethnic Russians over there. So when we talk about Kashmir, it is on the UN agenda since long. Do you think Pakistan can take Russia into confidence in order to goad or impress upon India in order to stop its atrocities, particularly in Indian illegally occupied Kashmir?
No, I think, to be honest, it would be very difficult at this time to even ask this question, because we haven't started our relationship. It's in embryonic stage, and I would plainly say that we should not really bring this issue at this time, and we always ask Chinese to step in, and Chinese did very well. For the Russians, we must understand as a country, because we haven't have a country study properly, and the diplomatic relation and the way they are linked to India, there has to be no contestation or comparison.
Dr. Rana, Ather Javed, I'll continue with this point. You've just mentioned that in embryonic stage, we shouldn't be raising this issue with the Russian authorities. Now, I've been joined again by Mr. Andrey, who is Director, Russian International Affairs Council, who is joining me on the phone line. Thank you very much for your time. So, Mr. Kortunov, this is a historic visit after 23 years of Pakistan's premier to Russia. So, how is it being seen from the Russian perspective?
Well, first of all, I think that Pakistan is growing in importance for the Russian Federation. It's a big player in Asia, and not only in Asia. We have growing economic and military relations, and on top of that, of course, the recent developments in Afghanistan make Russian-Pakistan links even more significant. I think that it is a kind of underinvested portfolio for Russia, and hopefully the visit would create an additional impulse for the economic cooperation and also for more cooperation at the political level. Definitely for Russia, with its pivot to Asia, Pakistan stands out as one of the most attractive foreign policy opportunities.
Okay, Mr. Kortunov, when we talk about the energy cooperation, there is 1,100-kilometer long Pakistan Stream gas pipeline project. Given the fact the U.S. has imposed new sanctions on Russia, Pakistan is actually focusing on enhancing energy cooperation with Russia, and Russia is also looking for a broader market in the region for its energy supplies as well. Given the fact now new sanctions have been imposed, do you think it's going to be an uphill task for both the countries to materialize and realize this specific gas pipeline project?
Well, I do hope that these projects have a lot of future. Indeed, Russia is now facing new sanctions from the United States and from the European Union. We don't know what will happen to the Nord Stream 2 pipeline going from Russia to Germany. The odds are that this pipeline will not be implemented in full, So Russia is looking for diversification of its energy relations. And I would also add to that I think that Russia and Pakistan can work together not only on hydrocarbons, but also on the energy transition, on the new sources of energy, renewables, and on energy efficiency. This is a big issue for both countries, and I hope that their comparative experience might be something that they can capitalize on in their bilateral relationship. It also requires participation of other regional states. Most of pipeline projects include other countries, so it is important to foresee multilateral arrangements here, either through the mechanisms of the TSCO or through some other arrangements.
So, Mr. Kortunov, given the circumstances that are regarding the Ukraine and stalemate between the West and Russia, Pakistan has always held a clear stance that it's not going to be the part of a regional bloc. Do you think Pakistan, as Pakistan offered its good office for the mediation between Russia, China and the US, can Pakistan play a similar role when it comes to mediation between Russia and the US and its allies?
Well, it's an interesting idea. We should look into that. We should see what Pakistan can do in this regard. I think that at this particular juncture, any mediation should be welcome. And I think that especially we should think about how we can limit the European problems to Europe only, so that these issues between Russia and NATO, Russia and the United States do not affect too much the emerging international system of Asia, because after all, Europe is of course important, but and it should not be the only game in town for Russia. I hope that in Asia, Russia and the United States will be in a position to avoid a direct confrontation and hopefully would even engage in some kind of cooperation. If Afghanistan can be of assistance in achieving this goal, that would be just great.
Mr. Andrey Kortunov, thank you very much for being with us at this special transmission, who is Director, Russian International Affairs Council. We really appreciate your time. Dr. Ather, when we talk about the mediation offered by Pakistan's Prime Minister when it comes to the relations between China and the US, do you think Pakistan can play the similar role of mediation between Russia and the US and its allies?
No, I really don't think so, because there are simple reasons for that. The Pakistan-Chinese relation had a very strong roots. And secondly, when Pakistan initiated with a relation between in 70s between President Nixon and that president at that time with the Chinese, that was a different situation, because as I said, Chinese and Pakistanis have a different relationship, trade relation, cooperation, defense, nuclear, and all that. In terms of Russia, we are, as we said, we have started just very new relationships, started building. And the first thing we need at the bilateral level, basically, to establish three important points, three important areas. One is to tie the countries, make the stakeholders of each other in energy sector, renewable energy, industry, and also in defense cooperation, defense products. And the second point is relates to people contact, trying to understand Russians, because we should remember they're not Soviet Union's model. I mean, maybe it appears, but the Russians themselves, if you talk to the high-ups, they are not really, they rather criticize Soviets, the role in Afghanistan, as they criticize American role in Afghanistan. So this we have to understand. The third point is that the diplomatic, we have shared the platforms like SEO platform, and also joint ventures. This would give us a credibility and sustainable and validity of the relationship. Unless we reach to that level where you build that confidence, like we have built confidence and listening to each other in China, about China, same can be done. Of course, Pakistan as a partner in the a bit more expanded gallery and more bigger bloc, little bit for more countries like Chinese and Middle Eastern countries, and then they initiate a mediation effort that would work, because the relation here is not about that there is a conflict. It's a larger picture is that the NATO wants to expand towards the eastward, including Ukraine and others, and Russia considers it a threat, because then the NATO forces would be at the doorstep of Russia, and that makes them jittery and worried. That's why they are taking all these actions in order to balance an international security. That's the issue, and that's a very serious issue, because when on 22nd October, if you remember that the NATO, 18th October, the Russian representative in Brussels in NATO was expelled, and 5 people were accused of something to send them as a PNG, persona non grata. It started at a very bad timing when Russia wanted to engage the NATO. So it's a very complex issue. So
Dr.
I think
Rana, Javed, your point is well taken. The same point, Dr. Amina, do you agree with Dr. Javed? Can Pakistan offer the mediation for getting over the stalemate between the US and its allies versus Russia?
I would appreciate Dr. Sab's point. I think that we don't have that capacity to mediate unless we develop our relationship to the level of confidence that they can trust on us, because we have been a US ally before, and it is hard
and
to
we are
believe,
still ally actually.
and we are still, and we are having a long relationship with the West, especially when we talk about West, we talk about the United States, in fact. So I think that it is embryonic relationship should go to the level where we have a mutual relationship on the basis of confidence, mutual stakes, and mutual cooperation and interest. Then we can go for that. Pakistan is lacking the same capacity in terms of United States as well. We are not enjoying that level of relationship where United States can trust us and they can continue with us as a mediator.
In this situation, how can Pakistan create a balance when it comes to its relations with the US, when particularly after the Biden administration took over the reins, there wasn't that much of warmth being shown by the US authorities?
Jawad, it is not a matter of warmth. You know, they have relegated to the level of relationship from most allied to normal level. So it is very much clear that Biden administration is not in that place where Obama administration was. So Pakistan has to take it normal as well, and we should open our choices in the region, and we can create a balance. We have already doing that. You know, Pakistan's ambassador General Khokhar, he met with the Deputy Prime Minister of Ukraine, and he assured that our relations with Russia are not going to influence our relations with Ukraine. And same is the case with the Western relationship. We are having a large volume of trade with the European Union and United States. So we want to continue, and I would suggest that this is the right way to develop relationship on economic and technological cooperation. That is sustainable way to develop relationship rather than to go on strategic relations, because the country like middle powers like Pakistan, they don't have capacity to switch strategic relation with their own will. Then you have to follow the dictates. So it would be clear message for United States and Russia as well that it's a complex situation and we are not there.
Dr. Ather, what do you say about this? How can Pakistan create a balance when it comes to relations with Russia and the US and the Western powers?
Yeah, like we say, it's the same for the US and other countries, like for us as well. We should not establish any relation which is mutually exclusive. Look, today we had this off and on relation with the US, always US and the European Union, Britain, Germany especially. We had a great relation with Japan, the biggest donor, and working with other developmental agencies. I think Pakistan as a foreign policy has been transformed, I would say. If I have to say this, in the past for 5 years, it has been transformed. We have opened up to establishing relation with Saudi Arabia and Iran at the both times, and we are trying to establish with Russia and US. There would be a backlash. There would be a backlash because the situation is pretty hot between US, West, NATO and Russia. But at the same time, these countries should also understand that they must also have a balanced foreign policy.
Dr. Rana Ather Javed, your point is well taken. Dr. Rana Ather Javed, who was joining me in the studio, DG Pakistan House, and Dr. Amina Mehmood, who was also joining me in the studio, foreign affairs expert. Thank you for being with us during this special live transmission regarding Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan's visit to Russia, a much anticipated visit. And there are a host of issues which are going to come under discussion between the top authorities of Pakistan and Russia. All eyes are set on this visit, and we'll keep on updating you regarding the developments as and when it happens over there in Russia. From me, Jawad Tehami, and my entire production team, it's goodbye for now.